The champagne flute slipped from Nia Carter's fingers and shattered against the polished stone floor before she realized she'd let go. The sound was sharp, final, too loud for a room designed to whisper luxury. Across the rooftop restaurant, framed by floor-to-ceiling glass in the glittering Chicago skyline, a man laughed softly and leaned closer to the woman across from him. His hand rested on her wrist with practiced intimacy, his thumb tracing a familiar circle. Nia knew that hand. She knew that laugh. It belonged to Graham Whitmore, her fiancé. And the woman sitting across from him, the woman smiling up at him like she was exactly where she belonged, was wearing the same deep emerald dress Nia had on. Same cut, same fabric, same unmistakable shimmer under the city lights. For half a second, Nia's mind refused to cooperate. It searched desperately for an explanation that wouldn't destroy her. A client meeting, a coincidence, a stranger who happened to look exactly like... The woman turned her head and the light caught her face. Sloan Mercer, her best friend. The room tilted. The skyline beyond the glass blurred into streaks of white and gold as Nia's pulse roared in her ears. This table, the corner table overlooking the river, was the one Graham had insisted on reserving weeks ago. For a surprise, he'd said. Trust me. He had proposed to her with this city as the backdrop, and now he was offering the same view to someone else. If this moment already has your heart racing, take a second. Like the story, leave a comment if you've ever trusted someone who didn't deserve it, and follow the channel so you don't miss what happens next. Some stories don't unfold quietly, and this one has only just begun. Nia stepped back before anyone noticed her. She pressed herself against the cool marble wall near the entrance, her breath shallow, her mind racing faster than the traffic far below. A waiter hurried past, murmuring apologies about broken glass, but Nia barely heard him. Her eyes were locked on the table. On her table, there were two gift boxes resting beside the ice bucket, two identical ivory boxes tied with satin ribbon. Her initials, N.C., were embossed in gold on both. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't a mistake, not a misunderstanding, not an accident wrapped in bad timing. This was choreography. The maitre d' approached the table, smiling politely, and Nia watched as Graham nodded, confident, comfortable, as if this night belonged to him. As if he hadn't just split her life cleanly in half. Someone touched Nia's elbow. Miss, are you all right? She forced herself to nod, to straighten her spine, to become the composed, unshakable woman people at her agency admired. The woman who led million-dollar pitches without breaking a sweat. The woman whose engagement announcement had been shared, liked, and congratulated across half of Chicago's professional circles. Not the woman who had just realized she was standing in the opening scene of her own humiliation. Nia turned toward the windows, needing distance, needing air. The city stretched endlessly beneath her, cold, brilliant, indifferent. Cars moved in neat lines. Buildings stood solid and unmoved. Everything continued, as if her world hadn't just cracked open. She reached for her phone without thinking. A notification sat unread from earlier that afternoon. He's going to lose his mind when he sees the dress on you tonight. Nia's fingers trembled. The dress, not a dress, the dress. Her pulse slowed, not from calm, but from clarity. A dangerous kind of clarity that stripped away denial and left only truth in its wake. Behind her, laughter rose from the table again. Graham leaned closer, his posture relaxed, familiar. He looked happy, unburdened, like a man who believed he was still in control of the story. Nia slipped her coat from the chair she'd been offered moments earlier and draped it over her arm. No tears. Not here. Not now. She refused to give this room, this night, the satisfaction. As she walked toward the elevator, she caught her reflection in the mirrored wall. A black woman in an emerald dress, eyes dark with something sharper than heartbreak. Resolve. The doors slid shut, sealing off the skyline, the table, the lie. And as the elevator descended, Nia Carter made a silent promise to herself. This would not end with her being the woman who didn't see it coming. The elevator ride down felt endless, each second stretching like it was daring Nia Carter to fall apart before she reached the ground floor. She kept her chin lifted, shoulders squared, her reflection in the mirrored walls a reminder of the woman she had learned to be. Composed, capable, unflinching. Only when the doors opened to the quiet marble lobby did she exhale. Cold air rushed at her as she stepped outside. Chicago in winter was unforgiving, sharp-edged and honest, and tonight she welcomed it. The wind cut through the thin fabric of her dress, grounding her in sensation when her thoughts threatened to spiral. She walked half a block before stopping beneath a street lamp and pulling out her phone. Her hands were steadier now. Not calm, never calm, but focused. She opened her messages. There it was again, Sloan's text from earlier that afternoon, glowing softly on the screen like a taunt. He's going to lose his mind when he sees the dress on you tonight. Nia stared at the words, replaying them with new ears. The dress. Not your dress, not that dress you showed me, just the dress. As if it belonged to some shared understanding she hadn't been invited into. She scrolled further back. Yesterday, Graham. I know it's expensive, but trust me, this one matters. Tonight will make sense once you're there. Matters. Nia locked her phone and slipped it back into her coat pocket, her breath fogging in the air. She could still see them if she closed her eyes. Graham's hand on Sloan's wrist, the identical sheen of green fabric catching the light at the exact same angle. It was too precise to be coincidence, too intentional. She turned and headed back toward the restaurant, not inside, never inside, but around the side, where the staff entrance sat discreetly behind frosted glass. Years in advertising had taught her one thing well. When the story didn't make sense, follow the logistics. A young hostess stood near the entrance, checking a tablet. She looked up, startled, when Nia approached. "Excuse me," Nia said evenly. "I believe there may have been an error with a reservation tonight." The hostess frowned, fingers flying across the screen. Name? Nia Carter. Recognition flickered across the woman's face, just for a heartbeat, too fast to be imagined. "Oh," she said softly. "Yes, the 8 o'clock." Nia watched her carefully. "There was a mix-up?" The hostess hesitated. "It's unusual but not unheard of. Two parties requested the same table. Same time, same..." She stopped herself, lips pressing together. "It was resolved." "How?" Nia asked. "The guest confirmed both reservations earlier this week." "Both." Nia nodded once. "Thank you." She stepped away before the hostess could say more, the final piece sliding into place with a sickening click. Graham hadn't double-booked by accident. He had duplicated the night, duplicated the dress, duplicated the intimacy, duplicated her. She walked again, faster now, her heels striking the pavement with purpose. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Once, twice. She didn't need to look to know who it was. At the corner, she stopped beneath another street lamp and pulled the phone out anyway. 2 missed calls from Graham. 1 voicemail. She didn't listen. Instead, she opened her email and searched for the receipt. She found it instantly. The boutique confirmation forwarded from Graham to her inbox days earlier, framed as a courtesy. "In case you need it for your records," he'd said. The dress details filled the screen. Color, Emerald Noir Edition. Limited run quantity. Available. 2. Nia's throat tightened. She tapped the boutique name and navigated to the site. The listing was still live, polished and minimal, the dress modeled on a faceless mannequin. Beneath the description sat a single line she hadn't noticed before. Sold as a matched pair. Her vision blurred, not from tears, but from fury so sharp it demanded her full attention. This hadn't been a spontaneous betrayal born of weakness or confusion. It was a design, a choice repeated, refined, and executed with care. She thought of the gift boxes at the table, the identical ribbons, the confidence in Graham's posture. He hadn't been afraid of being caught. He had assumed she wouldn't look closely enough to see. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message. "Where did you go? You're scaring me." Nia laughed then, a quiet, incredulous sound that startled even her. Scaring him. as if she were the unpredictable variable in this equation. She typed nothing, sent nothing. Instead, she opened her camera and scrolled through the photos from the past month. Engagement celebrations, mirrored smiles, carefully curated moments that now look staged, almost hollow. In every image, Graham stood just a fraction ahead of her, angled toward the lens, as if already positioning himself for another audience. Another version of the story, Nia slipped the phone back into her pocket and looked up at the skyline once more. The city hadn't changed. The buildings still stood. The lights still burned bright against the dark. But something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't the beginning of heartbreak. It was the beginning of awareness. And as Nia Carter turned toward the train station, the emerald fabric of her dress catching the light one last time, she understood something with devastating clarity. If Graham had gone to this much trouble to deceive her, then the truth, when it came, would ruin far more than a dinner. By the time Nia reached her apartment, the city had settled into its late-night rhythm. Distant sirens, the low hum of traffic, the quiet persistence of a place that never truly slept. Her building rose sleek and modern against the dark sky, all glass and steel, a testament to the life she had built carefully and visibly. Inside, the silence hit her harder than the cold had. Nia set her keys on the entry table and stood there for a moment, her coat still on, her pulse finally slowing enough for reality to catch up. This was the space Graham had admired when she first bought it. "You've got great taste," he'd said, running his hand along the marble countertop like he was assessing an investment. She walked past the living room and into the bedroom, stopping short when she saw the dress laid out across the chair. Another emerald dress. No, her emerald dress, identical to the one she was wearing now. She stared at it, confused, until memory snapped into focus. The boutique assistant had insisted on sending a second piece home for tailoring adjustments. Graham had volunteered to pick it up for her. She sank onto the edge of the bed. The room felt smaller than it had this morning, the walls closing in as her phone buzzed again on the nightstand. This time it wasn't Graham. It was her publicist. "Hey, I'm seeing some chatter online. Nothing big yet, but a couple of accounts are connecting dots from tonight. Are you okay?" Nia closed her eyes. Of course they were. Her engagement wasn't just a personal milestone. It had become part of her professional brand. Power couple, creative director and finance strategist, Black excellence meets old school pedigree. The local business blog had run a feature just last week, complete with photos from the engagement party Graham's mother had insisted on hosting. She hadn't wanted the spotlight, but she'd allowed it. Because Graham had wanted it. Because it seemed harmless. Because she'd believed they were building something together. She typed back slowly, "I'm fine, just heading home. I'll call you in the morning." She set the phone face down and stood, moving to the mirror above her dresser. The woman staring back at her looked polished, immaculate, untouched by chaos. Her makeup was flawless, her hair perfectly styled. The ring on her finger caught the light with deliberate brilliance. She twisted it slowly, then pulled it off. The silence deepened. Earlier this same day, she'd been standing in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows, presenting a campaign to a room full of executives. She'd commanded attention effortlessly, her voice steady, her vision clear. When she'd mentioned her upcoming wedding in passing, the room had erupted in congratulations. "You're glowing," someone had said. Now she understood why she'd felt uneasy even then. A tightness in her chest she dismissed as nerves. Not doubt, instinct. Nia moved into the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water, her hands steady again. She didn't cry. Not because she was strong, but because crying felt premature. Tears required finality, and she wasn't there yet. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was her aunt. "Aunt Denise, the ladies at church are excited about your wedding shower. Your mother's been showing everyone your ring." Nia swallowed. There it was, the weight she hadn't yet allowed herself to feel. The unspoken expectation. The idea that her engagement wasn't just hers to lose. It belonged to family, to community, to an image carefully constructed and proudly displayed. She imagined the questions that would come if she spoke the truth. The well-meaning concern laced with judgment, the whispers about patience and forgiveness, the subtle implication that a black woman who walked away from a man like Graham was being reckless, emotional, ungrateful. She leaned against the counter, the cool surface anchoring her. Her phone lit up again, relentless. "Please, just tell me where you are." She stared at the message until the words blurred. Somewhere across the city, he was likely pacing, rehearsing explanations, already shaping the version of events he would present if she confronted him. He had always been good at that, framing things just enough to sound reasonable, to make her doubt her own reactions. Nia set the phone down without responding. For the first time since the night began, the full loneliness of it settled in. Not the absence of a man, but the realization that she had been carrying this relationship alone. That the woman celebrated in public, admired for having it all, had been quietly compromising in private, adjusting herself to fit a future someone else was designing. She walked back into the bedroom and carefully removed the emerald dress, folding it with deliberate precision. She placed it back on the chair beside its twin. Two dresses, two narratives, one truth waiting to surface. Nia sat on the edge of the bed again, the city's glow filtering through the windows, and allowed herself a single, steady breath. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing with certainty. The version of her life everyone applauded from the outside was no longer enough to keep her silent. Morning arrived like an accusation. A pale winter light seeped through the curtains, turning the city outside Nia's windows into a watercolor of gray steel and softened edges. She lay still for a long moment, listening to the silence of her apartment, the kind of silence that meant nothing had been resolved, only postponed. Her phone sat on the nightstand, face down, like a sleeping animal that could bite if touched. Nia reached for it anyway. 27 missed calls, 15 from Graham, 12 from Sloan. Sloan's name on the screen did something sharp to Nia's chest, as if betrayal had a physical weight now, pressing against her ribs. She scrolled through the messages without opening them, letting the preview speak. "Please answer. This isn't what it looks like. I can explain. I'm coming over." Nia's thumb hovered. She almost deleted the thread outright, but she stopped herself. Number, not yet. Because last night had been a scene. What she needed now was a plot, a timeline, proof that would hold steady under scrutiny. Her own, her family's, the internet's. In a world where narratives could be rewritten in seconds, truth needed structure. She swung her legs out of bed and walked into the living room, stepping around the place where she had dropped her coat the night before. Her reflection caught in the dark glass of the window. A woman who looked calm and rested, as if her life hadn't been split open on a rooftop. She wasn't fooled. On the kitchen island sat the boutique box, cream-colored, embossed, elegant. Graham had insisted on keeping it at her place to surprise her. Last night she'd been too stunned to think clearly about it. Now she opened it slowly. Inside, the tissue paper was folded with obsessive neatness. A small envelope slipped out and landed on the counter. Nia stared at it, then picked it up. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind of stationery people used when they wanted something to feel official. It wasn't addressed to her. It was addressed to Sloan Mercer. For a moment, Nia couldn't move. Her mind tried to reject the evidence the way it had rejected the scene in the restaurant, searching for some harmless explanation. Wrong envelope, packaging mistake, a stray receipt. But the name was typed cleanly on the front. No smudges, no doubt. She opened it. Inside was a printed confirmation from the boutique. Order number 78,419. Emerald Noir, matched pair, 2 units, paid in full. And beneath that, in smaller text, delivery instructions, split shipment, 1 to N, Carter, 1 to S, Mercer. Nia's hands went cold. Split shipment, as if this had been arranged like a logistical puzzle, as if the humiliation had been designed to unfold exactly as it had. The same skyline, the same lighting, the same dress, the same table. She read the page again, slower this time, as though she could force the letters to change. They didn't. A sound escaped her, half laugh, half breath, sharp with disbelief. Sloan had known, not as an afterthought, not as a regretful mistake. She had known with the kind of precision that required planning. Nia set the paper down and walked to the bedroom. The second dress still lay on the chair, a perfect twin, as pristine as a lie. She ran her fingers over the fabric, the texture soft and expensive, and remembered Sloane's voice at the boutique 2 weeks ago. Light, admiring, almost teasing. Green is your color. It makes you look untouchable. Untouchable. Nia's mouth tightened. She had mistaken admiration for loyalty. She had confused closeness with safety. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and did what she always did when emotion threatened to overwhelm her. She organized search history, social tags, the kind of forensic work that built campaigns and dismantled competitors. She typed Sloane's name into the search bar and pulled up her public profiles. The curated perfection was still there. Smiling selfies, candlelit dinners, gratitude captions, soft, filtered snapshots of a life that looked effortless and good. But Nia wasn't looking for the obvious. She scrolled back. Weeks, months. Then she saw it. An image posted 6 months ago. A photo from a rooftop bar downtown. Sloane posed with a group, laughing. A man stood in the background, partially out of frame. The angle was wrong. The lighting dim. But Nia recognized the posture. The shoulders. The jawline turned slightly toward the camera like he'd been caught mid-motion. Graham. Nia's stomach clenched. She clicked the image and zoomed in until the pixels blurred. The man's hand rested on the back of Sloane's chair. Protective. Familiar. Casual in a way that didn't belong to strangers. Nia sat back slowly, air leaving her lungs. It wasn't just that Sloane had stolen her fiancé. It was that Sloane had been living beside her all this time, smiling across brunch tables, clinking glasses at engagement celebrations, helping her choose wedding colors, while her betrayal sat quietly underneath every moment like a second heartbeat. Her phone buzzed. A video call request. Sloane. Nia stared at the screen until the vibration stopped. Then it buzzed again. And again. Nia didn't answer. She didn't decline. She let it ring until Sloane's persistence turned into silence. A moment later, a text appeared. "I'm outside. Please don't make this worse." Nia's gaze flicked to the window. Far below, on the street, a familiar figure stood near the entrance of her building. Tall, slim, hair perfectly styled, coat belted tight. Even from this distance, Sloane's body language radiated confidence, like she still had the right to show up, the right to demand access. Nia's grip tightened around her phone. Don't make this worse, as if Nia had created the problem by noticing it, as if the betrayal wasn't already complete. Nia's heart beat steadily now, no longer frantic. There was a kind of calm that came when the worst truth was confirmed. When the mind stopped asking why and started asking what next. She watched Sloane glance up toward the building, as if she could sense Nia's eyes on her. Then Sloane lifted her own phone, and Nia's screen lit up again with another call request. The implications hit Nia in one sharp wave. Sloane wasn't just trying to explain. She was trying to control the scene. Who spoke first? Who looked guilty? Who looked hysterical? Who looked composed? The same way she curated her life online. Nia backed away from the window. If Sloane was here, it meant she wasn't afraid. And if she wasn't afraid, it meant she believed she still had something Nia wanted. Nia walked toward the front door, her bare feet silent against the hardwood. She placed her hand on the lock. On the other side of it was the woman who had once been her closest friend. On the other side of it was the beginning of the truth spoken aloud. And Nia knew, deep in her bones, that once she opened that door, there would be no going back to the life that had looked perfect from the outside. Nia did not open the door. She waited until Sloane left, until the shadow beneath the apartment door disappeared, until the building's security desk confirmed the visitor had gone, before she allowed herself to sit down. Only then did she text her mother, "We need to talk, today." The reply came less than a minute later. Come home. Home meant her parents' house on the south side, a place heavy with memory and expectation. By early afternoon, Nia was driving through familiar streets, lined with bare trees and brick homes that had witnessed generations of quiet resilience. Snow clung stubbornly to the edges of sidewalks. Nothing here ever pretended to be effortless. Her mother, Lorraine Carter, opened the door before Nia could knock. She pulled her into a hug that was firm, grounding, and just a second too long. "You look tired," her mother said softly, already studying her face for damage. Inside, the house smelled like coffee and something warm baking, comfort deployed instinctively. Nia's father sat at the dining table, his glasses perched low on his nose, the newspaper untouched. Her older brother Marcus leaned against the counter with his arms crossed, jaw tight. They all knew something was wrong. Nia sat down slowly, placing her phone on the table between them, like evidence. "I saw Graham last night," she said. Her mother exhaled in relief. "Oh, so the dinner—" He wasn't alone. Silence dropped fast and heavy. Marcus straightened. "What do you mean, not alone?" Nia met their eyes one by one. He was with Sloan, her father's hand stilled on the table. Her mother's face changed, not into shock, but into something older, something guarded. "Are you sure?" Lorraine asked carefully. "Sometimes things look—" "They were wearing the same dress," Nia said. "The same reservation, the same gifts. It was planned." Marcus swore under his breath. "I knew it. I never trusted that man." Lorraine shot him a look. "That's not helping." "What's not helping is pretending this is a misunderstanding," Marcus snapped. "That man humiliated my sister." Nia watched them argue around her, the familiar rhythm of protection and caution colliding. Her family had always loved fiercely, but differently. Marcus believed in confrontation. Her mother believed in survival. Her father believed in silence until certainty arrived. Lorraine turned back to Nia. "What are you going to do?" The question landed with more weight than anything else that day. Nia folded her hands together. "I don't know yet, but I'm not pretending it didn't happen." Her mother's lips pressed into a thin line. "You know people will talk." "Yes," Nia said evenly. "They already are." "And the wedding?" her father asked quietly. "There isn't going to be one." The words echoed. Lorraine looked down at her hands. "Nia, baby, you've already sent invitations. The church, our friends, your aunties are planning things. Do you know how it will look if you call it off?" Nia felt the familiar tightening in her chest, the old instinct to make herself smaller for the sake of peace. "How will it look?" she repeated. "Or how will it feel?" Lorraine didn't answer right away. Marcus leaned forward. "It'll look like she refused to be disrespected. That's how it'll look." Lorraine's voice sharpened. "You don't have to live in this community the way she does. You don't get the looks, the questions, the whispers about why a black woman couldn't keep her man." There it was, the sentence Nia had been bracing for since last night. She swallowed. "So the solution is to stay quiet? To accept it so people feel comfortable?" "No," her mother said quickly. "The solution is to be careful." Nia stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. But something unyielding settled into her spine. "I have been careful my entire life," she said. "Careful with my tone. Careful with my ambition. Careful not to intimidate, not to ask for too much, not to be seen as difficult. I was careful with Graham. I trusted him. I trusted my best friend. And being careful didn't protect me." Lorraine looked at her daughter then, really looked, and something in her expression cracked. "I stayed," her mother said suddenly, voice low. "When your father hurt me years ago, I stayed because I didn't want to be judged, because I didn't want to raise children alone, because I thought enduring was strength." The room went still. "I don't regret my life," Lorraine continued, "but I regret teaching you that love is something you survive instead of choose." Nia's throat burned. Her father cleared his throat. "Whatever you decide," he said, "you won't be alone." Nia nodded, emotion rising at last, but staying contained. Outside, the light shifted as afternoon gave way to evening. Another day moving forward, whether she was ready or not. Nia picked up her phone and slipped it back into her bag. This wasn't just about a broken engagement. It was about choosing whether she would protect an image or protect herself. And for the first time, the answer felt unavoidable. Nia waited until she was back in her car before she called Sloan. Not because she was afraid of facing her. Nia wasn't afraid of Sloan anymore, but because she refused to give her the intimacy of her home or the comfort of her family's walls. Some truths needed neutral ground. Some betrayals didn't deserve a soft landing. Sloan answered on the first ring, breathless, like she'd been holding the phone all day. "Nia, thank God. I've been trying." "Don't," Nia said, calm as glass. "If you want to talk, we'll do it in public." A pause. Then Sloan's voice softened into that familiar, honeyed tone she used online when she wanted to seem sincere. "Okay," she said, "whatever you need." They agreed on a coffee shop near Millennium Park. Bright, crowded, impossible to control completely. Nia arrived early, chose a table with her back to the wall, and watched people come and go through the window as if she were studying a scene she would later have to describe accurately. Her phone buzzed again, Graham this time, but she didn't look at it. When Sloan finally walked in, she looked like she'd stepped out of an editorial shoot. Long camel coat, sleek hair, perfect makeup that suggested she'd cried just enough to be sympathetic without smudging her image. She scanned the room, found Nia, and her face brightened with relief that didn't belong to someone who had committed a betrayal. She approached with open arms. Nia stayed seated. Sloan's arms lowered slowly, her smile faltering. She slid into the chair opposite Nia and reached across the table as if the distance between them was still something she could close with touch. Nia moved her hands to her lap. Sloan blinked, then let out a shaky breath. "I know what you saw," she began, "and I know how it looks." "How it looks?" Nia repeated quietly. Sloan's eyes filled perfectly on cue. "Nia, I swear to you, it wasn't supposed to happen like this." Nia tilted her head slightly. "Tell me which part wasn't supposed to happen. The matching dress? The duplicate reservation? The 2 gift boxes with my initials?" Sloan's lips parted. A flicker of panic crossed her face before she recovered. "I didn't know about the dress," she said quickly. "I mean, I knew he bought me something, but—" "Stop!" Nia's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I have the boutique receipt." Sloan froze. The cafe noise seemed to dim around them, as if even the world had paused to listen. Nia leaned forward just slightly. "Split shipment," she said. "1 to me, 1 to you. Limited run of 2. Matched pair, paid in full." Sloan's shoulders tightened beneath her coat. For the first time, the influencer mask slipped, just enough to reveal the calculation underneath. "Okay," she said, exhaling. "Okay, but you have to understand." "No." Nia's eyes didn't leave her face. "You're going to understand me first." Sloan's gaze darted around, aware of the people nearby, of the risk of being seen. She lowered her voice. "Nia, please. This doesn't have to be a spectacle." Nia almost laughed at the irony. "You didn't seem worried about spectacle on the rooftop," she said. Sloan flinched. "That was Graham. That was his idea. He said you weren't answering your phone, and he didn't want to ruin the night, and you went along with it." Nia's tone sharpened by a fraction. "You sat in my seat. You wore my dress. You smiled at the table he proposed to me at." Sloan's eyes flashed. "It's not your table." Nia went still. There it was, the truth sliding out before Sloan could stop it. Not regret, not guilt, possession. Sloan swallowed and tried to reassemble softness. "Nia, I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened. We didn't plan." "Don't insult me," Nia said, the words quiet but lethal. "You plan your breakfast posts. You plan your captions. You plan the angle of your face in sunlight. And you want me to believe you fell into my fiancé by accident?" Sloan's cheeks flushed. "You don't know what it was like." Nia's gaze hardened. "Then tell me." Sloan stared down at the table, then back up, eyes shining again. "He was lonely," she whispered. "He felt Invisible. Nia's fingers tightened around the edge of her cup. Invisible. Sloan nodded, as if relieved to have found a narrative. You're always working, always on, always winning. And he didn't know where he fit. With me, it was easy. I wasn't asking him to be perfect. Nia blinked slowly. So this was the story Sloan had chosen. Nia, too ambitious, too powerful, too much. The same accusation wrapped in prettier language. Let me get this straight, Nia said. You betrayed me because I have a job? Sloan's jaw tightened. It's not just a job, Nia. It's your whole personality. You're always controlling everything. Nia felt something deep inside her settle. Anger, yes, but also clarity so clean it almost felt like relief. I didn't control Graham, she said. I accommodated him. I adjusted. I rearranged my life so he could feel important. And you were there, watching me do it. Sloan's eyes flickered again, impatience creeping in. I'm not saying you deserved it. I'm saying it wasn't good between you two. Nia leaned forward another inch. How long? Sloan hesitated. Nia didn't blink. How long, Sloan? Sloan's voice dropped. Since last summer. Nia's breath caught, not because she hadn't suspected, but because hearing it aloud made it real in a way nothing else had. Last summer meant the engagement party, the bridal appointments, the nights Sloan held her hand and told her she was lucky. Nia nodded once, slowly. Sloan reached for her again. Nia, please, I'm still your friend. No, Nia said. Friends don't do this. Sloan's expression shifted, the softness evaporating. Then what do you want from me? A confession? Tears? Because I can't change what happened. Nia stood. People glanced up. The air around them tightened. I don't want your tears, Nia said, voice steady. I want you to understand that you don't get to rewrite this into a love story. Sloan rose too, eyes bright with anger now. You're going to ruin everything, she hissed. Nia looked at her, really looked, at the woman who had smiled beside her in photos, who had toasted her future, who had shared her secrets like they were gifts. No, Nia said softly. You already did. She turned to leave, heart pounding, but steps measured. She could feel Sloan's gaze burning into her back, could almost hear the frantic calculations forming. What to post, what to say, how to spin. As Nia pushed open the cafe door, winter air slapped her cheeks, sharp and cleansing. Behind her, the bell above the door chimed, and Nia knew, with absolute certainty, that this confrontation was not an ending. It was a trigger, because people like Sloan didn't confess. They counterattacked. By the time Nia reached her apartment that evening, Graham had already decided what kind of man he was going to be. Remorseful, broken, misunderstood. Her phone confirmed it before she even took off her coat. Voicemails stacked one on top of another, each more emotional than the last. Texts arrived in clusters, carefully spaced, as if timed to feel urgent without appearing desperate. Please just talk to me. I can explain everything. This isn't who I am. I love you. Nia set the phone down on the counter and watched it light up again, vibrating insistently against the marble. She didn't pick it up. She didn't need to hear his voice to know the script. Graham had always been good at reading a room, better at reading people. He knew when to lean in, when to pull back, when to offer just enough vulnerability to disarm suspicion. It was the same skill that made clients trust him, that made strangers feel chosen, that had once made Nia believe she was safe. The first delivery arrived less than an hour later. White roses, 24, her favorite, because he had made them her favorite. The card was handwritten. I made a terrible mistake. Please don't let one moment erase what we built. Nia stared at the flowers, immaculate and overwhelming, crowding her entryway like a performance staged for an audience that wasn't there. She didn't move them. She didn't throw them out. She stepped around them as if they were part of a set she refused to engage with. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a new name appeared. Catherine Whitmore, Graham's mother. Nia felt a tightness bloom behind her ribs. Catherine had always been cordial, distant in the way women could be when they were assessing value. She had loved the optics of Nia, the career, the composure, the way her son looked beside her at charity events. She let the call go to voicemail. Another buzz followed almost immediately. Unknown number. Nia, sweetheart, this is Graham's father. Please call us. We're very worried. They were worried. Not about her. About control. Nia poured herself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen island, her posture straight, her face unreadable even to herself. Outside, the city lights flickered on one by one, indifferent witnesses to a private collapse. Then the messages shifted. Mutual friends, colleagues, people who had attended their engagement party, who had toasted their future. He's devastated. He says you won't answer. Whatever happened, I'm sure it can be worked out. He's not eating. This is really hard on him. Hard on him. Nia closed her eyes briefly, the anger simmering now, controlled but unmistakable. This was Graham's true talent, not deception, but delegation. He never confronted conflict directly if he could outsource the pressure to others. If he could make her the unreasonable one without saying it himself. Her phone rang again. This time, she answered. Nia, Graham said immediately, his voice hoarse, breath uneven, like he'd been crying or practicing sounding like he had. Thank God, I've been losing my mind. She didn't respond. I know how bad this looks, he continued quickly, but you have to believe me. I never meant for you to see it that way. That way, Nia repeated. Yes, he said, relieved she'd spoken. Like a betrayal. It wasn't. Then what was it? She asked calmly. A pause. She could almost hear him recalibrating. I was confused, Graham said. I didn't know how to tell you I was struggling. You've been so busy, Nia, so distant. There it was, the pivot. So you slept with my best friend, Nia said flatly. It wasn't like that, he insisted. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Nia pictured the receipt, the split shipment, the matched pair. Funny, she said. It looked very planned. He inhaled sharply. She's exaggerating. You know how dramatic Sloan can be. Of course, discredit the woman. Redirect the blame. Nia leaned back against the counter, her reflection faintly visible in the darkened window. She looked calm, centered, like someone who was no longer participating in the same reality. You made duplicate reservations, she said. You bought 2 identical dresses. You put my initials on both gift boxes. Silence. Then Graham laughed softly, incredulously. Nia, come on. That's not what that means. What does it mean, then? Another pause, longer this time. It means I was trying to avoid hurting anyone, he said carefully. I didn't want a scene. Nia felt something cold settle in her chest. You didn't want a scene, she repeated, but you were fine creating one as long as I wasn't there to see it. That's not fair, he snapped, irritation breaking through the performance. I'm the one being attacked here. You disappeared. You're not answering anyone. People are asking questions. People, always the audience. Graham, Nia said quietly, you don't sound sorry. I am sorry, he shot back. I'm just saying you're making this bigger than it needs to be. There it was. The truth slipped out again, naked and undeniable. She smiled then, not because anything was funny, but because something inside her finally clicked into place. You're worried about the story, she said, not the damage. His breath hitched. I'm worried about us. No, Nia replied. You're worried about losing. Another delivery arrived while he was still on the line. The buzzer echoed through the apartment. Graham heard it. I sent you something else, he said quickly. Please, just look at it. I'm done looking, Nia said. His voice hardened. You're being unreasonable. She laughed softly. No, Graham, I'm being clear. He exhaled sharply. If you walk away from this, people will talk. Nia's smile faded. They already are, she said. The difference is, I'm not afraid of the truth. She ended the call before he could respond. The silence that followed was deep, almost sacred. For the first time since the rooftop, her thoughts were her own. No spin, no persuasion, no performance, just reality. And somewhere across the city, Graham Whitmore was realizing something terrifying. His usual tricks weren't working, and if he couldn't control Nia privately, he would try to control her publicly. By morning, the story no longer belonged to Nia. She knew it the moment her phone began vibrating across the kitchen counter before she'd even poured her coffee. Not ringing, buzzing. Notifications stacking faster than she could clear them. Messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Emails marked urgent. A calendar invite titled Crisis Sync from someone in her agency's communications team. Nia didn't touch the phone at first. She stood at the window and watched the city wake up. Delivery trucks double-parked, commuters hunched against the cold, steam rising from subway grates like the city was exhaling something it had been holding overnight. When she finally picked up the phone, the headline was already there. Not from a major outlet, not yet. From a lifestyle blog that specialized in whispers disguised as reporting. Engaged power couple drama. Was he cheating? Or was she? Nia felt a slow, hollow drop in her stomach. She opened the article. It was written carefully, almost politely. No outright accusations, just questions. Screenshots of public posts. A blurred photo taken from across the rooftop restaurant. Graham's profile unmistakable. The emerald dress unmistakable. Sloane's hair unmistakable if you knew where to look. The caption read, "Sources say the bride-to-be left abruptly. Witnesses describe tension." Witnesses. The comments were already multiplying. Men don't cheat for no reason. She's always working. What did she expect? That dress situation is wild, though. Nia scrolled once, then stopped. She didn't need to see more to know where this was headed. Her phone rang. This time, it was Marisol, her publicist. "We need to talk," Marisol said without preamble. "Right now." "I know," Nia replied calmly. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You sound steady." "I am." "Okay," Marisol said. "Good, because this is starting to spread. And I need you to hear this clearly. Silence will be interpreted, either as guilt or as weakness." Nia closed her eyes briefly. "And speaking will also be interpreted," Marisol said. "But at least we can control how." Nia glanced at her laptop, still open on the kitchen table. The receipt, the boutique confirmation, the screenshots she hadn't sent to anyone yet. "I'm not giving them a spectacle," Nia said, "but I'm not lying." "That's good," Marisol replied, "because Sloan just posted." Nia's jaw tightened. "Posted what?" Marisol hesitated. "A story, black background, white text. You know the style." Of course she did. Marisol read it aloud. "I never wanted to speak on this, but when private pain becomes public speculation, silence becomes complicity. Love is complicated. Truth is rarely one-sided. Please be kind." Nia let out a slow breath. "Love is complicated. Truth is rarely one-sided." A masterpiece of implication without evidence. An invitation for the internet to fill in the blanks in Sloane's favor. "And Graham?" Nia asked. "He hasn't posted," Marisol said. "Which is strategic." Nia almost smiled. Of course it was. He was letting Sloane absorb the first wave, letting her soften the narrative, letting the public decide Nia was volatile before he ever said a word. Another notification appeared on Nia's screen, this one from her agency's internal Slack. "Number leadership. We're getting questions from the client." There it was. Not heartbreak, not humiliation, risk. Her phone buzzed again, this time a text from an executive she barely knew. "Hope you're okay. Let us know if you need time to step back." Step back. Nia straightened. "No," she said aloud, though no one was there to hear it. She dressed carefully that morning, choosing lines that were sharp, colors that grounded her. Not defensive, not apologetic. She pulled her hair back into a clean, intentional style and studied her reflection. The woman in the mirror did not look like someone who had been abandoned in public. She looked like someone who had been underestimated. By the time she reached the office, the whispers had arrived before her. Conversations dipped as she passed. Eyes lingered too long. sympathy mixed with curiosity in ways that made her skin prickle. In the elevator, two colleagues fell silent when she stepped in. "Good morning," Nia said pleasantly. They startled, nodded, overcorrected with smiles. On her desk sat a bouquet of white roses. Again, this time, there was no card, just the flowers, immaculate and suffocating, as if apology could exist without accountability. Her assistant hovered nearby, uncertain. "Do you want me to move those?" "Yes," Nia said. "Please." As the assistant carried the bouquet away, Nia's phone buzzed once more. A new message. Unknown sender. "You didn't have to embarrass him like this." Nia stared at the words. She typed back slowly, deliberately. "I didn't embarrass anyone. I left." She set the phone face down and opened her laptop. If this was going to be public, then it would be precise. Because the most dangerous moment in any scandal wasn't the exposure. It was the silence that allowed someone else to tell your story for you. Mia had always trusted documents more than apologies. Words bent easily, paper didn't. By the time the office quieted that evening, she was alone in her glass-walled conference room with her laptop open, the city glowing behind her like a witness that never slept. Her reflection hovered faintly on the screen, focused, unflinching, stripped of any illusion that this could still be salvaged with conversation. She opened a new folder and named it simply Timeline. Then she began. It started small. A search of Graham's professional bio, the one she had skimmed 100 times without reading closely. Senior investment strategist, 10 years of experience, elite firm, impressive clients. The words had once reassured her the way credentials were meant to. Tonight, they felt hollow. She clicked through to the firm's website. His name wasn't there. Not under leadership, not under senior advisors, not under the team at all. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. She searched again. Different spelling, middle initial, nothing. A slow chill moved through her. Nia opened LinkedIn next. Graham's profile looked polished, authoritative, full of the right buzzwords. But when she scrolled past the headline, the details began to unravel. Vague dates, overlapping roles, a promotion timeline that didn't make sense unless time itself had been bent to flatter him. She clicked on the firm he claimed to have worked for before. Another dead end. Her pulse quickened, not with panic, but with the unmistakable sensation of pattern emerging. Nia opened public records, property filings, LLC registrations, court documents. It didn't take long. The first hit came from a civil case 3 years ago, settled quietly, sealed enough to avoid headlines. Graham's name appeared not as a defendant, but as a respondent. A financial dispute with a former partner who claimed misrepresentation. Nia's jaw tightened. She opened the PDF. The language was dry, legal, almost boring, but the accusation was clear. Graham had exaggerated his role, overstated assets, and leveraged someone else's credibility to secure funding. Sound familiar? She leaned back in her chair and exhaled slowly. This wasn't new behavior. This was repetition. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her. A message from a mutual friend she hadn't spoken to in months. "Hey, I don't know if this matters, but Graham asked me once not to mention how we met. I always thought that was weird." Nia didn't reply. She didn't need to. She opened her bank app next. The shared account, the one Graham had insisted made things easier. The one he'd framed as a symbol of trust. She pulled the statements and exported them. There it was, small transfers at first, then larger ones, always justified as temporary, always followed by charm and reassurance, always framed as teamwork. She cross-referenced the dates. Every major withdrawal lined up with something significant. A gift for Sloan, a business trip, a deposit for something she'd never seen. Her chest tightened, not with regret, but with fury sharpened by clarity. She had funded her own betrayal. Nia closed her eyes for a moment, grounding herself, then opened her email. She searched for prenup. The draft appeared instantly, forwarded months ago by Graham with a casual note. "Just something my parents want us to look at eventually. No rush." No rush. She opened the attachment. The language was dense, intimidating by design. She skimmed until a line caught her eye, a clause referencing a joint investment vehicle tied to her condo equity. Her condo. Nia's breath slowed as she read more carefully. The document implied consent, implied agreement, implied she had reviewed and approved, but she hadn't. She scrolled to the signature page. Her name was there, typed, dated, formatted exactly like her digital signature, except it wasn't hers. The room felt suddenly too small. Nia stood and paced once, then twice, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. The city lights outside didn't flicker. They held steady, as if daring her to do the same. She sat again and took screenshots of everything. Every discrepancy, every inconsistency, every lie that had once been hidden behind confidence and affection. Then she did something she hadn't expected. She searched Sloan's name in connection with Graham. The result came faster than she wanted. An image archive from a year and a half ago. A restaurant check-in tagged by someone else, long forgotten. Graham and Sloan seated close together, heads inclined, the body language unmistakable to anyone who knew what to look for. The timestamp made Nia's stomach drop. This wasn't an affair that began last summer. It was a parallel life. She closed the image and stared at her reflection in the darkened screen. For a brief moment, grief rose, hot and sharp, for the woman she had been. The woman who had believed consistency was character. That charm meant sincerity. That love required fewer questions, not more. But the grief passed. What replaced it was something harder, stronger, evidence. Nia saved the folder to an encrypted drive and shut her laptop with decisive finality. Graham hadn't just betrayed her emotionally, he had underestimated her intellectually. And that, she knew with quiet certainty, was going to cost him far more than a relationship. Because lies could survive feelings, they couldn't survive documentation. The lawyer's office overlooked the river, all glass and clean lines, the kind of place designed to make people feel small enough to tell the truth. Nia sat upright in the leather chair across from the desk, her coat folded neatly beside her, her expression composed in a way that came from long practice. But inside, every nerve was alert. This wasn't a conversation about feelings. This was about damage. Across from her, Vanessa Liu flipped through the documents Nia had emailed the night before. Bank statements, screenshots, boutique receipts, the prenup draft. She didn't interrupt. She didn't react. She read with the calm intensity of someone trained to spot fault lines. Finally, she looked up. "He's dangerous," Vanessa said flatly. Not dramatic, not sympathetic, precise. Nia exhaled slowly. "Legally? Potentially," Vanessa replied. "Emotionally? That's not my lane. But financially and reputationally, yes." She turned the laptop toward Nia. "Let's start with the engagement ring. You paid for it. The funds came from your account. His proposal story is irrelevant. Ownership is clear." Nia nodded once. "The shared account," Vanessa continued, "is more complicated, but not in his favor. He framed it as joint convenience while using it unilaterally. That's misrepresentation." She paused, then added, "The forged signature is the most serious issue." Nia's fingers curled slightly in her lap. "What happens with that?" Vanessa didn't soften her voice. "If we push it, it becomes criminal." The word hung in the air. Nia stared past the window for a moment, watching the river move steadily beneath the bridge. She had imagined many versions of this fallout. Police reports hadn't been one of them. "I don't want revenge," Nia said quietly. "I want separation, protection." Vanessa. She slid a document across the desk. "This is a cease and desist. It covers defamation, harassment, and unauthorized use of your name or likeness. It goes to him. It goes to Sloan. It goes to any intermediary trying to speak for you." Nia scanned the page. The language was sharp, unmistakable, no emotion, just boundaries drawn in ink. "And this," Vanessa continued, tapping another document, "is a notice of representation. Once it's sent, all communication goes through me. If he shows up at your home, your office, or contacts your family again, It strengthens our case. Nia felt a familiar tension ease in her shoulders. What about my job? She asked. The client pressure, the blog posts. Vanessa met her gaze. You're not the liability here. He is. But silence can be misread. I recommend a controlled statement, short, factual, non-inflammatory. Nia nodded. No interviews. None, Vanessa agreed. You don't explain yourself in a storm. You secure the building. She closed the folder. One more thing. If he files anything first, claims emotional distress, abandonment, whatever narrative he chooses, it becomes messier. We should move today. Today. The word landed with weight. Nia thought of her mother's kitchen table, of the church ladies whispering, of Graham's voice on the phone, accusing her of being unreasonable, of the flowers piling up like apologies without substance. She straightened. Send it, she said. Vanessa's lips curved into something like approval. Good. The email went out an hour later. Subject line, formal notice of representation. It was copied to Graham, to Sloan, to Graham's parents, who had been calling relentlessly under the guise of concern, to one mutual friend who had tried to broker peace. Nia watched the sent confirmation appear on her phone and felt something decisive settle into place. This was the line. On one side, confusion, manipulation, performance. On the other, clarity, consequence, control. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. What the hell is this? Are you seriously threatening? Nia didn't respond. Another message followed. You're blowing this out of proportion. Lawyers, really? Still nothing. A third. If you do this, things will get ugly. Nia stared at the words for a long moment. Then she handed her phone to Vanessa. Add that to the file, she said calmly. Vanessa smiled thinly, gladly. As Nia left the office, the afternoon sun cut through the clouds, sharp and bright against the steel of the city. For the first time since the rooftop, she felt something close to relief. Not because the damage was undone, but because it was contained. Graham had spent years blurring lines between truth and performance, partnership and control. Today, Nia had drawn one he couldn't charm his way across. And whatever came next, it would no longer be negotiated in private. Nia was halfway through her presentation when the knock came. Not loud, not urgent, polite enough to be disruptive in a room that had been sealed for focus. The kind of knock that assumed it would be welcomed. She paused mid-sentence, one hand resting lightly on the edge of the conference table. Around her, senior leadership sat attentive, screens glowing with campaign projections and timelines. This meeting mattered. It had taken months to secure, weeks to prepare. She was in control. Her assistant leaned in, face carefully neutral. Nia, she said softly, there's someone at reception asking for you. He says it's personal. Nia didn't need to ask, who? A ripple of curiosity moved through the room. Small shifts, exchanged glances. She felt it instantly, the subtle change in air pressure when private life threatened to bleed into professional space. Tell him I'm unavailable, Nia said calmly. I'm in meetings all day. Her assistant hesitated. He said he'll wait. Nia nodded once. That's his choice. She turned back to the screen without missing a beat. As I was saying, the campaign's strength lies in narrative consistency. The room refocused, questions followed, engagement deepened. For 45 uninterrupted minutes, Nia was exactly who she had always been here. Decisive, articulate, respected. When the meeting adjourned, she gathered her notes and stood, pulse steady. The executive team filtered out, offering nods and quiet praise. Someone murmured, "Excellent work." She smiled politely. In the hallway outside, Graham was waiting. He stood near the reception desk, an enormous bouquet of white roses cradled in his arms like a prop. He wore the navy coat she'd once complimented, the one he saved for moments when he wanted to look dependable. His posture was contrite, his expression carefully wounded. The performance was flawless. "Nia," he said, stepping forward as if relief had flooded him at the sight of her. "Thank God, I've been trying to reach you." Several heads turned. Conversations slowed. This was an open floor, glass walls, shared space. Visibility was unavoidable. Nia stopped a few feet away from him. "You were told not to contact me," she said evenly. He winced, as if struck. I know, but this is important. Please, just 5 minutes." "You don't get 5 minutes," she replied. "Not here, not ever." She moved to walk past him. He followed. "I made a mistake," Graham said louder now, his voice catching just enough to draw attention. "A terrible mistake. But what we had was real. You know that." A cluster of employees slowed nearby. Someone pretended to check their phone. Someone else lingered too long at the coffee machine. Nia felt the familiar instinct to shrink, to smooth things over, to protect the space from discomfort. She didn't. "This is not appropriate," she said, her voice still calm but caring now. "You need to leave." "I'll end it with her," he said quickly. "Tonight, we can fix this. We can start over." The audacity landed like a slap. Nia turned to face him fully for the first time. She took in the flushed cheeks, the two bright eyes, the desperation bleeding through the charm. This wasn't love. It was entitlement panicking at the loss of control. "You're making a scene," she said quietly. He scoffed. "You're the one dragging this out. Everyone's watching." "Exactly. That was your plan, wasn't it?" Nia said. "Come here, corner me, force a conversation where I'd feel pressured to be polite." His jaw tightened. "I just want to talk." "No," she replied. "You want leverage." A few people nearby froze, pretending not to listen while absorbing every word. Graham's voice dropped, sharp now. "You're being unreasonable." That word again. Nia felt something inside her settle, like a final piece clicking into place. "Unreasonable," she repeated, "is planning a double life. Unreasonable is humiliating me in public. Unreasonable is ignoring a legal notice and showing up at my workplace." His eyes flashed. The mask slipped. "You wouldn't be here without me," he hissed. "I believed in you before anyone else did." There it was, the truth, stripped of polish. Nia didn't raise her voice. She didn't step back. "You didn't make me," she said clearly. "You benefited from me, and now you're exposed." Silence spread outward, heavy and unmistakable. Graham laughed harshly. "You think you've won? You're throwing everything away." Nia glanced at the roses in his arms. White, pristine, useless. "Security," she said, without turning around. The word carried. A guard approached from the end of the floor, expression neutral, professional. Graham looked around, suddenly aware of how many people were watching now, of how the narrative had shifted. "This isn't over," he said, voice low. Nia met his gaze one last time. "It is." The guard gestured toward the exit. Graham hesitated, then allowed himself to be escorted away, the roses drooping awkwardly in his arms. As the elevator doors closed on him, the floor exhaled. Nia stood still for a moment, the adrenaline fading, replaced by something steadier. A colleague approached carefully. "You handled that incredibly," she said. Nia nodded once. "Thank you." She walked back to her office, closed the door, and leaned briefly against it, not in weakness, but in release. He had tried to ambush her with spectacle. Instead, he had given her witnesses. And for the first time, Nia understood the power of being seen, not as a victim, but as a woman who refused to be cornered ever again. The first call took less than 3 minutes. "Yes," Nia said calmly, phone pressed to her ear, as she stared out at the city from her apartment window. "I need to cancel the reservation. Not postpone, cancel." There was a pause on the other end. Paper shuffling, a careful, professional breath. "I understand," the venue coordinator said. "May I ask the reason?" "No," Nia replied gently. "You may not." Silence, then a softer tone. "Of course, I'll process it today." Nia ended the call and wrote "done" in the notebook beside her. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She moved like someone executing a plan that had already been approved internally. The second call was harder. The florist gasped when Nia gave her name. "Oh my God, I just saw something online." Are you okay? I'm fine, Nia said. I need to cancel the order. Oh, honey, the woman said instinctively. You don't have to decide anything today. I already have, Nia replied. One by one, the future unraveled in her hands. The caterer, the photographer, the band Graham had insisted on because they were his taste. The calligrapher who had just mailed out the final batch of invitations. Each conversation chipped away at something that had once felt permanent. With every cancellation fee, every non-refundable deposit, Nia felt a strange, steady relief. Money left, weight lifted. By noon, her dining table was covered in paperwork, contracts, receipts, timelines that now belonged to a life she was dismantling with precision. Her phone rang. Her mother. Nia, Lorraine said, her voice tight. Your aunt called me. She heard from someone at the church. Nia closed her eyes briefly. I know. They're asking questions. I expected that. Lorraine hesitated. People are saying you acted too fast, that you should pray on it, that calling off a wedding like this, well, it reflects. Nia opened her eyes. On who? She asked quietly. Lorraine didn't answer. I didn't end the relationship, Nia continued. I ended the lie. Another pause, longer this time. Your father supports you, Lorraine said finally. Marcus too. I worry about how this will follow you. Nia softened. I know you do, but staying would follow me longer. After she hung up, she sat very still, letting the weight of generational expectation pass through her without settling. She had inherited strength, but also silence. She was choosing which parts to keep. The doorbell rang. Nia didn't move. It rang again. She checked the security feed on her phone. A delivery driver stood outside, holding a garment bag and a clipboard. She buzzed him in. Package for Miss Carter, he said when she opened the door. Signature required. She signed without comment and closed the door behind him. Inside the bag was Graham's suit. The one he'd had custom tailored for the wedding. The one he'd left here weeks ago because he liked seeing it hanging beside her dresses, as if proximity alone made them a unit. Pinned to the lapel was a note, written in his familiar slanted script. We can still fix this. Nia removed the suit from the bag and laid it carefully across the back of a chair. She smoothed the fabric once, then twice, not with affection but with finality. She took out her phone and typed a single message. All personal items can be collected through my attorney. She blocked his number. Her phone vibrated almost immediately. Unknown number, then another, then another. She ignored them all. That afternoon, she opened her laptop and drafted a short email. No emotion, no explanations, no blame, just facts. Due to a personal matter, the wedding scheduled for March has been canceled. Thank you for your support and understanding. She sent it to the guest list. Within minutes, the replies poured in. Shock, sympathy, curiosity, thinly veiled judgment wrapped in polite language. If you need to talk, I hope you're okay. This must have been so hard. Nia read none of them beyond the first line. She closed her laptop and stood, walking through her apartment slowly. She took down the engagement photos from the hallway wall and stacked them face down in a drawer. She removed the ring from her finger and placed it in a small velvet box, then locked it away. The apartment felt different already, less crowded, less performative. As evening fell, Nia sat on the floor with her back against the couch, exhaustion finally settling into her bones. Not regret, not doubt, release. She thought of the wedding that would never happen, the aisle she wouldn't walk down, the vows she wouldn't say to a man who had never intended to honor them. Somewhere across the city, Graham was likely spiraling, calling, explaining, rewriting the story in his head where he was still the center. Here, in the quiet of her living room, Nia Carter chose something else. She chose certainty. And with the last cancellation confirmed, she understood something profound. Ending the wedding wasn't the loss. It was the first real decision of her freedom. The lie went live at 9:14 p.m. Nia was halfway through a quiet dinner, something simple, something grounding, when her phone began vibrating with a kind of urgency that never meant good news. Not one call, not two, a cascade. Her screen filled with notifications before she could pick it up. She knew before she looked. Sloan had finally played her hand. The video was already everywhere by the time Nia opened it. Posted to Sloan's main account. Perfect lighting, bare face, hair pulled back in a way that suggested vulnerability without sacrificing aesthetics. No makeup, except maybe just enough to look fragile. The caption was short. I didn't want to do this, but silence has been weaponized against me. Nia felt a familiar chill creep up her spine, the kind that came not from fear, but from recognition. She pressed play. Sloan's voice trembled just enough. I've been getting harassed all day, she said softly, threatened, judged. And I've stayed quiet because I believed in handling things privately. But when someone uses power to control the narrative, silence becomes dangerous. Power. Sloan paused, eyes glistening. What people don't see is what I lived with. The manipulation, the emotional volatility, the way loyalty was demanded, not earned. Nia set the phone down slowly. This wasn't damage control. This was a calculated inversion. Within minutes, the comments flooded in. Protect women who speak up. We don't know what happens behind closed doors. Powerful people can be abusive too. Nia's stomach tightened, not because the lie was convincing, but because it was familiar. She had seen this tactic before. The pivot from perpetrator to victim, the suggestion that confidence equaled cruelty, that boundaries were abuse if they inconvenienced the wrong person. Her phone rang. Vanessa, I assume you've seen it, the lawyer said. Yes. Good. Then listen carefully. Do not respond publicly. Not yet. Nia closed her eyes. She accused me. She implied, Vanessa corrected. That distinction matters. Nia inhaled slowly. What do we do? Vanessa's voice was calm, surgical. We document, then we respond once, precisely. By midnight, the counterstrike was in motion. Not a rant, not a thread, not receipts spilled in rage. A statement, drafted by legal, reviewed by PR, approved by Nia, line by line. It was 3 paragraphs long. No names, no insults, no emotion. Just facts. That false statements had been made. That legal counsel had been retained. That further defamation would be addressed accordingly. And one final line, devastating in its restraint. I will not participate in rewriting reality for the comfort of those who created this harm. The statement went live at 12:03 a.m. The shift was immediate. Not because everyone believed Nia, but because people recognized confidence when they saw it. The refusal to beg, the refusal to over-explain, the refusal to play the same game. Then the witnesses came forward. Quietly at first, a former colleague of Graham's messaged a journalist. He did this before. A restaurant employee confirmed the duplicate reservation. A boutique associate verified the matched pair purchase. Receipts didn't scream. They stacked. By morning, the tone had changed. Why would someone buy 2 identical dresses? This feels intentional. That lawyered statement says a lot. Sloan posted again, this time angry. This is exactly what I mean, she wrote, using intimidation to silence women. But the spell was broken. People noticed the inconsistencies, the timing, the monetized vulnerability, links, affiliates, brand tags still running beneath the tears. Nia watched none of it directly. She sat in Vanessa's office again, hands folded, listening as the next steps were outlined. Cease and desist to Sloan's management, Vanessa said. Notice to the platform. Documentation forwarded to 2 outlets we trust. Nia nodded. In Graham, Vanessa's lips curved slightly. He panicked. How so? He contacted your attorney, not his own. Tried to explain. That never goes well. Nia felt a quiet satisfaction, not triumph, but alignment. Things were behaving as they should when truth was allowed to exist. That afternoon, a message slipped through on an unblocked channel. Unknown number. This is getting out of hand. You're hurting people. Nia stared at it for a long moment. Then she typed a reply, not to send, but to see it written. I didn't start this. I ended it. She deleted the draft and put the phone down. Outside the window, the city moved on, relentless, impartial. The internet would eventually find a new scandal, a new woman to dissect, a new narrative to devour. But something irreversible had already happened. Nia had stopped defending herself. She had stopped negotiating with lies. This wasn't revenge. It was consequence. And for the first time since the rooftop, the story was no longer spinning out of her control. It was closing in, exactly where it belonged. The truth didn't arrive all at once. It arrived the way it always did, piece by piece, carried by people who had nothing to gain from speaking and everything to lose by staying quiet. The first was a woman Nia had never met, a restaurant server, mid-20s, no blue check, no following. She posted a single thread late one night, careful with her words. I worked the rooftop that evening. Same man, same table, 2 reservations, 2 women, same dress. That wasn't an accident. She didn't name names. She didn't need to. By morning, the post had been screenshotted, reposted, dissected. Commentators argued. Skeptics demanded proof. Then the hostess from the same restaurant confirmed it in a reply, apologetic and restrained. We flagged it internally. It was unusual. Unusual became intentional. Then the boutique spoke, not publicly, not loudly. A quiet confirmation to a reporter known for restraint, not spectacle. The kind who waited until facts outweighed outrage. The dress was sold as a matched pair. Split shipment was requested by the purchaser. The purchaser. Graham's name didn't trend immediately. It didn't need to. The outline of the story sharpened without it. A pattern emerged. A former co-worker of Graham's gave an anonymous interview. Calm, unemotional, he curated personas. For clients, for women, whoever was in front of him. Another voice followed. Then another. Nia watched none of it unfold in real time. She was at her parents' house that Sunday afternoon, sitting at the same dining table where she had learned to read, to argue respectfully, to survive discomfort without naming it. The house was full, too full. Cousins, aunties, friends of the family who came to check on her. Support, dressed in curiosity. Someone asked if she was eating enough. Someone else asked if she was praying. A distant cousin whispered that she hoped Nia hadn't overreacted. Nia smiled politely and excused herself to the kitchen. That was when the doorbell rang. Her father answered. Graham stepped inside like he belonged there. He looked smaller somehow, less polished. His confidence had thinned into urgency. He held no flowers this time, no props. The room stilled. Nia, he said, forcing a smile, we need to talk. Her mother's face drained of color. Marcus moved instinctively, positioning himself between Graham and the hallway. You shouldn't be here, Lorraine said sharply. I just want to explain, Graham insisted. This has gone too far. Nia stepped forward before anyone else could speak. No, she said calmly. It's gone exactly far enough. He looked at her then, not the version he'd performed for the public, but the real one. Calculating, desperate. They're destroying me, he said under his breath. You could stop this. Nia held his gaze. I didn't start it. You could end it, he pressed. Just say something. Tell them it wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, Nia replied. His jaw clenched. You're enjoying this. The accusation was almost comical. No, she said. I'm surviving it. A knock sounded behind him. 2 men stood on the porch. One in a dark coat, one holding a folder. Graham Whitmore? The man asked. Graham turned slowly. You've been served. The room exhaled as one. Graham's face shifted. Anger, fear, calculation all colliding at once. He took the papers with shaking hands, glanced at the header, then looked back at Nia like he'd never seen her before. You planned this, he said. Nia shook her head. You did. He left without another word. That evening, the article finally ran. Not a blog, not a thread, a feature. It didn't speculate. It didn't sensationalize. It laid out a timeline, reservations, receipts, statements. It included context about power, about how narratives bent more easily around women who refused to perform pain in palatable ways, about how Black women were expected to absorb betrayal quietly to preserve everyone else's comfort. The comments were different, not unanimous, never unanimous, but thoughtful. This feels deliberate. She didn't yell. She didn't overshare. That says something. Why did we assume she was lying? Nia read that one twice. By the next morning, Sloane's account was dark. No explanation, no farewell, just silence. And Graham, once so confident in his ability to outtalk consequence, had retreated into legal counsel and unanswered emails. The world didn't applaud Nia. It recalibrated. And in that recalibration, something powerful happened. She was no longer the woman at the center of a scandal. She was the woman who told the truth and let it stand on its own. The noise faded. The lies collapsed under their own weight. And in the quiet that followed, Nia felt something unfamiliar settle into her chest. Not victory, relief. Because the truth, once witnessed, no longer needed her to carry it alone. 6 months later, Chicago looked different to Nia. Not because the city had changed, but because she had. Morning light filled her apartment, softer now against walls she had repainted herself, colors chosen without compromise. The silence no longer felt heavy, it felt earned. She stood by the window with a mug warming her hands, watching the city stretch awake, and realized she wasn't bracing for anything anymore. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A calendar reminder, promotion review, final approval. She smiled. The campaign she had led during the worst weeks of her life had exceeded expectations. Not despite the chaos, but because she had stopped wasting energy managing someone else's emotions. Her director had been direct. You've never been clearer, more decisive, more yourself. Nia had accepted the promotion without apology. Graham's name surfaced occasionally, like an echo that no longer carried weight. The legal process concluded quietly. No dramatic apology, no redemption arc, just consequences handled by people trained to deal with facts instead of charm. Sloan never reached out again. Nia didn't wonder why. Some friendships weren't meant to end loudly. They ended by revealing what they had never truly been. On a quiet Friday evening, Nia met her mother for dinner. They talked about work, about family, about ordinary things that no longer felt small. At one point, Lorraine reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I wish I'd known I could choose myself sooner, her mother said softly. Nia squeezed back. You taught me more than you think. Later that night, Nia walked alone along the river, coat buttoned against the breeze, her reflection rippling beside her in the dark water. She thought about the woman she had been, the one who believed love required endurance, explanation, and silence. That woman had loved deeply, but she had loved without protection. This version of Nia loved differently. She loved clarity. She loved peace. She loved the sound of her own voice when it wasn't shrinking. She hadn't sworn off love. She hadn't closed herself off. But she had learned something essential. Love that costs you your dignity isn't love. It's a transaction disguised as devotion. The greatest relationship she was building now wasn't visible on social media. It didn't come with announcements or rings or curated photographs. It was the relationship between who she was and who she refused to abandon ever again. And that, she knew, was a love story no betrayal could take from her. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose yourself when the world expected silence, like this video, share your thoughts in the comments and follow the channel for more stories about truth, resilience, and reclaiming your power. Because the most important love stories aren't always about who stays. Sometimes they're about who finally walks away and becomes free.